Welcome everybody. This is the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community call. This is the Tuesday 8 a.m. Pacific time community call. Today is March 14th, 2023. And I do apologize for those who might be watching this as a recording, as to join the call 1 hour potentially later than typically, or 1 hour later for the call to actually happen, because again, the call is created in the Pacific time zone, and that means that it happens 1 hour earlier for 2 weeks until Europe moves to daylight savings. So that might be a confusing thing for some of the people. But do check if you download the recurrent invites from the website, which we are always sharing. You can actually get that recurrent invite is adjusting automatically to the right time zones. Now, today we'll have a typical set of recapping the latest news and updates, and a few typical slides which we always go through. We have the latest news around Microsoft blogs. We'll do a group photo for those who are willing to enable the camera, and we'll take a GIF animation out of that. And then we'll do a demos or topics, because Waldek's section is not really a demo, but he's going to do a recap on what has happened in the Microsoft Graph Hackathon within a last week. So right now, from the 1st of March until the 15th of March, there's Microsoft Graph Hackathon ongoing, where you can actually win prizes, cool stuff, and you will get a badge if you participate and contribute as part of that contribution as well, which is awesome. Waldek is going to cover that. And then we will move to Dewain Robinson to talk about boost your conversations in the Microsoft Teams with ChatGPT, AI, and Power Virtual Agents. There was some really good news, awesome news shared pretty recently related on these areas, and Dewain is going to talk about that one and do a live demo as well. And then Dan is going to cover or continue the long, not a long, but a journey of our series around Azure Communication Services. And this time it's about deploying Azure Communication Services application to Azure. So how would you, now that you built that application, how would we deploy that to Azure and start using that within a production usage? Now, as we start moving along, just a few recap on all of the different assets which we have available. We do have our YouTube channel where we publish all of our videos and recordings from this community calls. So individual demos are also published there. A lot of other demos as well. We do have a relatively new LinkedIn group for discussions and updates, and that's a really easy way to get in touch with other community members. And it is a group, so you can actually add your findings and your blog post or cool articles which you run into, and share those within that group as well. So please do subscribe or join on that group and share your findings as well. We do have a lot of open source assets available in a GitHub, but as it might be a bit difficult to find the relevant sample from all of the thousands and thousands of repos which are available, we also have sample galleries which are really intended to make it easy for you to find the relevant sample for you. So do not start from scratch. Start from an existing sample, or at least have an existing sample which showcases the art of possible on the site, and you're able to copy some of the ideas from the existing samples. And if you're wondering that there's too many URLs to remember, luckily it is only one, which is akms/community/home. And from there, you can get access on all of these awesome things and opportunities. Now, we do have quite a few different community calls. This is the one which is happening in every single Tuesday, 8 a.m. Pacific time, which is with Microsoft speakers, so directly coming from product managers, cloud advocates, engineers, and so on. And then we do have a set of other calls as well. So Power Platform monthly community call, where we typically have community demos, Microsoft Identity Platform call happening monthly as well. Both of these, by the way, happening this week. So we do have a lot of stuff happening this week within the community call side. Office Adding community call is a monthly one, and then we have our 7 a.m. Pacific time series, which is either Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community call or Viva Connection and SharePoint Framework community call. And in that 7 a.m. Pacific Thursday time, that's typically a community demo. So basically learning from others within the community. You can download the recurrent invites from akms/community/calls. And those invites are adjusting automatically for the daylight savings, so it's a great way of actually getting your calendar up to date, because there are some overlapping changes as we have seen within these calls. Now, agendas for these calls are always published in social media and in also at https://akms/community/meetup. So that's a good way of actually getting notified on upcoming week's agenda details. I think typically on Thursday or Friday and within the previous week. So really, really great opportunity as well. Now, as mentioned, a lot of these calls are actually looking into having community presenters and community people. But a lot of these demos are actually presented by the community, and we are always looking into new community presenters, and these demos and slots are a great way for you to get access on doing for example, getting even an MVP status. So there are great opportunities of getting acknowledged by the community and showcasing the art of possible what you built around the community areas. Now, we do have also awesome getting started assets for the Microsoft 365 site, which is the Microsoft 365 developer program, from where you can get a free E5 developer tenant. And in that tenant, you can, of course, use Power Platform capabilities and adjustments and learn things, how to make things happen within the Microsoft Cloud. We also have a lot of free learning material available in the Microsoft Learn, which will help you to get started on building experiences in Microsoft Cloud. Now, we also have three different podcasts or vlogs which are available for you to take advantage. And all of these three are publishing typically in a once-a-week sequence. So we have the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast, typically hosted by Jeremy Fake and Aisha Bas or Paul Schaffelin. We have the Microsoft 365 PMP Weekly, which is hosted by Waldek Mastykarz and yours truly, Vesa Juvonen. And then we have the Power Platform Connections, which is hosted by David Warner and Hugo Bernier. So all of these three are great way of staying up to date on what's happening within the technology side. We also have our Microsoft 365 Power Platform sample gallery, and this one was the one which is making it easier for you to find all of the relevant samples which are available in GitHub. So as part of the GitHub submissions, we are actually adding an entry in our unified Microsoft 365 Power Platform sample gallery, so that you can go to this gallery and just use the text box search or filtering, and you can find a relevant sample for you. You'll see more promotion about this sample gallery within upcoming weeks and months as we start rolling out an updates over there as well. We already have 1,520, if I remember correctly, from today, samples in the gallery, making it easier for you to get started on building experiences for Microsoft Cloud. Now, as you might be wondering then that, hey, there's the sample and I would like to get started on using that sample, but you might not be super familiar on how to get started. And that's why we have our Sharing is Caring initiative. Now that as David and Hugo unfortunately couldn't join us today, I'm going to cover this one quickly. But if you go to the AKMs/sharing-is-caring, that is the location where you can find all of the different events where we are helping you to get started within the Microsoft Cloud. So we have different events and different setups and meetups available, from getting started on contributing in GitHub, getting started on contributing in Docs, starting to use your Power Platform samples, writing for the web, and so on. So, and there are new sessions scheduled for March, and a new session also planned to be scheduled in April. So it's a great way to learn how to get started on using these technologies, and none of these sessions are being recorded. So you don't have to feel bad about not knowing things, because we all need to start from somewhere. And it's awesome to have this kind of a network of connections and community members helping you to get started. Now, we also have a lot of different events coming up on this spring, so quickly recapping some of that stuff as well. So we do have the Microsoft 365 conference happening at Las Vegas on May 2nd to May 4th. There's actually going to be even workshop days before that and after that. So there's going to be an awesome set of Microsoft speakers and community and MVP speakers in that conference in early May. We also have the community-led European Collaboration Summit happening in end of May at Düsseldorf, which is a community-created no-profit conference. So one really convenient way to actually meet people as well in a relatively, let's say, cost-friendly way as well. So, and that's expected to have 1,500 to 2,500 attendees and so on as well, and a lot of Microsoft presenters there. We also have the 365 EduCon happening in June 12th to June 16th in DC, and then later this year in Seattle and Chicago. So really great opportunities in US to do in-person conferences. And coming back on the Europe, we also have the European Power Platform conference happening in Dublin 20 to 22nd of June, almost overlapping with the DC EduCon, but in a different region for sure, and that's again a great opportunity. Dublin is a brilliant city. I've been in that venue personally, and I really like that. That was a super convenient location to have these conferences for sure. And then there's a lot of other conferences and meetups happening throughout the world. So do take advantage of them as well. If you go to the AKMS Community Days or communitydays.org, AKMS address isn't that shortening in this case. You can find all of the different events organized also by the community throughout the world. Now, a lot of me talking, a few more slides to get them out, and then we go to the actual stars of the day. We do have few news happening within the last week. So from the Microsoft 365 developer side, there was a recap as the Hack Together, the Microsoft Graph and .NET week's second recap, and that's something what Waldek is going to cover pretty much today. There's going to be a still nice event happening on Wednesday, March 15th at 4 p.m. GMT, where they're going to talk about community and community involvement with community and MVP members. There was also an announcement of Microsoft Graph Toolkit v3 first preview, and then there was a GA, general availability for Microsoft Graph.NET SDK version 5. On the Microsoft Teams side, there was a really cool new feature which we've been testing internally for a while, which is introducing video filters into Microsoft Teams meetings, and that's something where you can actually overlay effects on top of your video and all of that stuff. So you don't have to use any alternative, let's say, effect books or video editing things to make those happen, and they are natively possible directly in Teams. Really cool stuff as well. Now, and let's actually get ready. For those who are willing, let's do a quick group photo. With the people who are willing to take things or enabling their camera. Give me 1 second. I will move my Teams in here. And let me go to Together mode. And let's use, that is always a nice one. Here we go. And let me start my Camtasia. And whenever the Camtasia is starting, we have 50 seats in the room. I got there as well.
I see Dan, glasses.
A lot of familiar faces, a few more seats,
And right,
let me,
the other one.
Yeah, I think we're maxed out. Let me put the recording on, and let's grab a GIF animation out of that and share that in the social media. Thanks everybody for joining. Let's do some hand waving. Awesome to have you on a call. Really, really cool. And hopefully we'll see you in some of the in-person events later this spring. Excellent. Really, really cool. Good. I will move that away from there and we'll do a GIF animation out of that. But then it's time for the real stars of today. So we'll start with Waldek, who's going to do a Microsoft Graph Hackathon recap for the second week and what is that all about. And I'm not going to spill any beans by saying you are not too late yet. You can still participate, which is really, really cool. And then we'll move to Dewain Robinson around the Microsoft Teams and ChatGPT AI and Power Virtual Agents. And then Dan is going to close up today. Waldek, let's move on your.
Excellent, thank you. For somebody who said that you will not spill any beans, you already spilled all the beans. You said that it's not too late, and you said that I will do the recap, and you said that there will be a community. So what else is it to add? So March 1 through March 15, meaning Wednesday, tomorrow, we're doing a virtual hackathon around Microsoft Graph and .NET. And in this hack, it's all about using Microsoft Graph in .NET apps, whether you want to build a desktop app, a web app, console app, whatever app, as long as it's built on .NET and uses Microsoft Graph, you are in. And the cool thing is, like, we've done over the course of the last 2 weeks, a few talks where we showed like, hey, this is the Microsoft Graph, and this is what you can do with it. This is what is available. And today we are 1 day until the last day. So today is still like you can still work on your hack. Even tomorrow, you still have the whole day to work on your hack. As long as you submit your hack until the end of the day, you are in. And the cool thing is, we've got some cool prizes to offer, right? So first team will, or first winner will win an Xbox, right? And $200 gift card, $100 Azure credit, and a badge. And we also have prizes for second and third place. And the cool thing is, you can enter by yourself, or you can enter as a team up to 4. So if you enter as a team, everybody on the team, up to 4 folks, will get that prize. So 4 Xboxes if you are in a team of 4. And then everybody who sends their hack will also get a digital badge. And that is brought to you in collaboration with the Microsoft 365 platform and Power Platform community. As we said, it is still not too late. You can send or enter hackathon and submit your hack by the end of day tomorrow, Wednesday, March 15. Go to aka.ms/hack-together. Go through the instructions, register, submit your hack, and make chance for a cool prize that you might just win. So with that, thank you, and back to you, Vesa.
Excellent. Thank you, Waldek, on that one. And then we'll jump to the actual real demos of today. So we'll start with Dewain. Dewain, are you good to go?
Yep. I'm going to share my screen if you don't mind.
Excellent. That's the idea. Absolutely.
All right. Okay, so first things first, I want to make sure that I kind of level set with you guys. Power Virtual Agents is a Power Platform application that allows you to be able to build conversational AI experiences. Now, one of the popular channels that we have for being able to have chatbots where you can communicate with, of course, is Teams. And there's a lot that's going on in this space. So, and we're going to have some demos of a really cool new feature, but just to kind of get you started, if you're not aware, we have a public preview that's currently out where today, currently in Power Virtual Agents, you have two different authoring canvas environments. You have a low-code authoring environment that comes just out of the box with PVA, as well as you can download the Bot Framework Composer, which is a pro-code authoring experience where you can use either of these to be able to build different topics within your conversation. Now, the beauty of the new public preview that we announced a few months back was that we actually decided we were going to bring these two canvases together into this new unified authoring canvas. And by doing this, we're enabling people to be able to not have to make a decision on the different authoring canvas that they're going to use. They can author now rich responses. We brought PowerFX in and a new variable system that allows you to do really complex things that you couldn't do in the past, and also not making you have to learn an adaptive expressions language that's unique to bots. Now you can leverage the PowerFX system to be able to figure out how you can write different queries and things to bring tons of great formula logic to your bot. Also, being able to look at the code side by side with a visual authoring canvas. You can actually edit or copy and paste into wherever you want. So this makes it where you don't have to worry about if you don't know how to write YAML, you can choose to do it in the visual authoring canvas, or you can write YAML and you can even copy and paste YAML into the visual authoring canvas, or copy a node out into Notepad and get the YAML. So this is actually really powerful. We also are bringing in the ability to do things beyond just being able to say something. You'll be able to send and receive events and be able to provide context to the bot without the author actually saying things. And then we've done a lot of work in productivity around copy and paste. We've multi-node selections and things of that nature. But everyone here is really here to hear about the new feature that we announced on the 9th. And that new feature, which is also in that public preview. So if you go and you are building a new bot, you just have to simply just say that you want to create a new bot in the preview. It'll give you two options, production or preview. Choose the preview option. And one of the new things that we offer is boosting your conversation with GPT technology. Now, what is this? This is actually allowing you to say that you want to be able to boost a conversation and allow you to be able to take a URL, a public-facing URL, and make that part of the bot conversation without having to author all the topics. Now, being able to do this allows it to generate the responses only from the content that you've connected, and allows you to be able to be in control of the GPT experience that you're generating responses from. It also reduces the hallucination that you get from a GPT response. If any of you've used ChatGPT, you're aware that it can kind of make things up. So we are actually doing the work to make sure that that hallucination is not happening across your data, as well as we're also making it where you can reuse content from your website to be able to bring it in and generate conversations. Now, all of this is great, but nothing speaks better than a demo, right? So let's go in and let's do a live demo. And in this is a Power Virtual Agent spot that I've created. Now, in this, I went ahead and I'm using the Georgia Tech website. So Georgia Tech is a university here in the United States, very popular university. And you can see here that I've just simply enabled boosting the conversation to georgiatech.edu. Now, you'll notice also as well that I have options to be able to handle the filtering. But if we look at the topics within this bot, you can see that I really don't have much. I just have like goodbye, greetings, start over, and thank you. There's really not much in this bot that we're looking at. So what I'm going to do is, just so you guys don't have to watch me type, I've already got a few things I'm going to ask this bot. And one of them is, I'm going to say, what are your admission requirements? And it will come back, and you can see that it's responding to my conversation with different answers. Now, the breadth of this is that you'll see is all of these things are actually happening on the back end through a GPT generated response fed from the website. And I'll just ask it a bunch of different things here so that you can see all the different things that we can potentially answer by plugging this in, noticing that none of this has been authored as content within the bot. Also, be aware that we are also having it where it's pulling this live against the website. So if the website were to get updated, it would automatically provide additional information that is accurate and up to date from the website. So keeps you from having to maintain a bunch of different topics in an FAQ backend and things of this nature. And you can see, like, an example is recently Kamala Harris went to Georgia Tech to talk about a particular topic, and it'll take it a second here just because this environment is actually a internal environment, so it takes it a second sometimes to respond. So with all of this, notice that we've been able to generate all these responses. I've accelerated the ability to do all this. Now, one last piece that I want to jump back to my slides here, just to make sure that we set some expectations around this. So we see this as a new paradigm and the way that topics will be created and the way that topics will be managed for conversational agents. Generated responses that are happening with OpenAI models or with our conversation booster are more of a piece of a conversation or a piece of a conversational agent. It could even be a piece of a topic, not the whole bot. So what you should expect is that you're going to have things that you're going to author through the unified authoring canvas. These are the core things that your bot does. Like if I wanted to purchase something or I want to submit an application, these would be examples of things that you would author with multi-turn conversations that are scripted and a process you walk through. There's also a need for FAQ and scripted responses. And FAQ and scripted responses, you can use PVA topics, you can use FAQs with custom question answering. This is a situation where maybe I don't, even though it's my data, if I want to say, well, what is the best drink in the world? And let's say I'm a company like Coca-Cola, I actually want marketing to control that. I don't want that to be generated off of some article about an award we won. So then you have these generated responses. These generated responses we anticipate will fill in the blanks or allow you to have a conversational experience that will go around a specific set of data. And then last but not least, escalation. The ability that if you're getting frustrated or you see churn detection or something of this nature, or if someone says they want to talk to a live person, this is where the escalation channel comes in, or the escalation component comes in. I mean, that's where omni-channel or a live agent handoff scenario plugs in. Now, the key is the way that we are able to achieve this is PVA acting as that dialogue manager, bringing all of this together into a unified experience for users and allowing you to be able to tap the power of the GPT responses and generated responses while keeping the control within the enterprise. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for your time today. Hopefully this is exciting. If you want to give this a try, I'll put a link in the chat that will allow you to be able to go try PVA. But we look forward to hearing your feedback. and look forward to seeing how you guys use this in the future. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Dewain. That was really, really cool and awesome updates for sure. Great demo, great presentation. And then I guess it's time. Dan, we can see you already. You are ready to go, clearly, which is good. And then we'll jump to the Azure Communication Services. Now, it might be that we are a bit ahead of time today. Let's see if we'll have time for the Q&A in the end. And we can always close a few minutes early, better than going to a few minutes extra. But Dan, take it away.
All right, thanks. After watching that great demo, I'm like, I obviously should have put some OpenAI ChatGPT stuff into my demo. I don't have that. That was super cool. So I'm excited to be back here for, I think this is like the 6th week in a row we've been talking about integrating services across the Microsoft Cloud. Specifically, we've been talking about Azure Communication Services, Microsoft Graph, Microsoft Teams, Azure, and we're going to continue that today with kind of a wrap-up talk about deployment options. So for those that don't know me, my name is Dan Wahlin. I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft. And this project we've been talking about, I worked with my colleague Aicha Bosch on. And as a quick review, this is kind of what we went through. And these are all recorded. So you don't need to, I realize you can't come every single week, although you should. But if you can't, this is all recorded so you can get to these. And we started off by introducing how could you embed audio video capabilities into pretty much any custom web app? And we can do that with Azure Communication Services. So we talked about how to set that up. In our case, we talked about doing it with a React app. But again, it's just a front-end technology, so you could use it with Angular and other technologies out there if you wanted. Now, the last 2 weeks, Aicha joined us, and she talked about how we could use Microsoft Graph with Azure Functions to dynamically create a Teams meeting. And that would allow, for instance, a customer to go to a website, start up this audio video capability, and then call right into a Teams meeting. Pretty cool, actually. And then last week, she talked about how we could use Azure Functions to get the tokens and the identity that we need for the user that would be making this call from the custom app. Now, that's all recorded again, so if you're interested, you can go check that out. Just go to the YouTube channel for this community series. Today, I'm going to wrap it up because I think the one thing we oftentimes skip is deploying these things. You learn about all the cool technologies out there, but then at some point you have to deploy. Now, there's many options that I could choose for this. I want to kind of call that out. There's different Azure App Services. If you use containers, you could use containers. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite Azure services, though, called Azure Static Web Apps. And if you haven't used this and you're using something like React or Angular, Svelte, Solid, Next.js version of Angular, the list goes on and on and on, Gatsby, anything that can generate static content, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, then you could use Azure Static Web Apps. And it does way more, though, than just host. And we're going to talk about that right here. Now, as a quick review, this particular app was built using React on the front end, but I want to emphasize you could choose whatever you wanted. And that's where Azure Communication Services was used. The user could go to that. That would create an event in a calendar, and then that would allow them to call into, for instance, a customer service rep, or maybe it's an employee using an app out in the field, and they need to talk one-on-one with somebody back at headquarters. Lots of use cases here. All right, so if you haven't heard of Azure Static Web Apps, this sums it up pretty well, and I'll give credit to my good friend John Papa, who's also at Microsoft. I kind of borrowed, can we say, some of these slides here that he did a great job on. So from code to global scale, when you're talking about deploying an app, and let's say it is a worldwide app, now you start to get into things like CDN and caching at the edge and all these other technologies behind the scenes to make sure that no matter where somebody hits your app from in the world, that they're going to go through the fastest route to get to that app. Well, Azure Static Web Apps can help us with that, and it takes all the complexity out. In fact, as it says here, you can build a static web app in literally minutes. I'm going to try to do that and prove that here. So if you haven't done it before, it builds and hosts static web apps. And when I say static web app, again, we're talking about a JavaScript type app as an example. So it could be HTML and just CSS. It could be HTML with JavaScript. But anything that you're using that's kind of a front-end technology would be fair game here for the most part. So that's Angular, React, Svelte, Vue, Gatsby, and you'll see other options as I go to the Azure portal in just a moment. Now, I'm not going to have time today to go into this part, but it does support built-in authentication and authorization. So you can get that kind of out of the box. And then it also supports deploying your APIs. So it's not just about deploying the front-end app, and this particular app is calling into Azure Functions. Well, it'll also allow you, and this is optional, but I love it, it will allow you to even deploy your APIs to Azure Functions if you want. Of course, that's totally up to you. You don't have to go that route, but it is built in if you'd like to use that. And then finally, this is probably my favorite feature of all is, if you're not somebody who has to set up the build pipeline and get all that code automated, and, anytime a new merge comes in or a PR comes in that's approved, you got to get that deployed somehow. Well, for a lot of us, that's where we turn to maybe our DevOps folks over here. And you still might in this case, but it will actually generate GitHub actions for you to automate this process. And I'm going to kind of show you how that works here. Now, what this does is, let's assume you have a GitHub repo out there, public or private, either way, and a push or a PR request comes in. What'll happen is this will set up a GitHub action. It'll generate all the YAML you need, and then you could tweak it if you need to. That would automatically deploy, well, first off, build, and then deploy your content, including your functions, if you want, so that pretty much anybody across the world can now hit this. And this even takes care of different regions and all that across the world, which is super neat. So I'm going to show you this process here kind of from scratch, or at least try to in the time I have. And then we'll kind of go from there and see how it goes. So with that, let me jump on over to a command window here. And the first thing I did, I ran this a little bit earlier just because, doing an npm install, I don't want to wait on that. But I generated a create React app. Now, if you do, something like Angular or Vue or Svelte, do your thing. Same exact process is going to apply. I'm going to stick with the type of app that was used for the previous sessions we did in these community calls. So this is a TypeScript app. I've already generated it just to show you. If I do an ls here, you'll see the standard suspects, package JSON, my source folder, all that type of stuff, and I could run it locally. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, though, is use one of my favorite tools. If you haven't installed the GitHub CLI, I highly recommend you check it out. If you go here for Windows, obviously it'll have an option for that. I'm on Mac right now. So this actually allows you to do all kinds of things. I'm only going to show you one, but you can work with PRs, issues, you can create repos, all kinds of stuff. The list goes on. In fact, if I just type GitHub repo create, now I am in my React app that was created. All right, and I'm just going to hit enter here. And now it's going to say, all right, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to create a new repository on GitHub from scratch? No, I want to push an existing local, the code I just showed you. So we'll hit enter there. What's the path? Well, I'm in the folder, so dot, leave it. Repository name, SWA demo, sure. We'll leave that. And then owner, what's your org for GitHub? In my case, Dan Wahlin. Description I'm not going to do. Visibility I want to make public. And then we'll let it do its thing here in just a moment. Do we want to add a remote so that obviously we can, check in changes and do all that? We're going to say yes. What should the remote be called? I always just default to origin. And would you like to push commits for the current branch to the origin? Yes, I would. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. And you'll notice what this does is now sets up a repo for us. Pretty cool. So if you haven't done that, that's not static web apps, but I needed a GitHub repo. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, GitHub, I want to go view the repo view, but I want to view it on the web. So I basically want to pull up a web browser. And this should now take me to my repo. There it is. There's all the code you saw that was in the folder. So, okay, we now have a repo. If you have never seen the GitHub CLI, a little bonus there for you. Now we can get to static web apps. What I'm going to do now is go to the Azure portal. And if we come on up top here, I'm just going to type static, and you'll see static web apps comes up. And then I'm going to hit create. And from here, I'm going to let it create the resource group. We'll call this M365 demo Wahlin to make sure it's all unique. Looks good. Now you have some options here. You actually get a lot for free with static web apps. So if you haven't checked it out before, you'll notice they have a compare plans. I won't have time to go into that right now, but there's actually quite a bit you get for free. Like if you want to host a personal site, check this out for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that. Now, I don't have any Azure functions in this one, but in the actual app, I do. And we'll wrap up with that in just a moment. But I'm out in the West US, so you'll notice the areas we can deploy around the world for your functions. And then it's going to say, all right, where do you want to get the source for this? Now, I mentioned earlier that GitHub is kind of the default, but if you're using Azure DevOps or even another one, you can make that work as well. I'm going to go ahead and go with GitHub. You'll notice Dan Wahlin is here. I could change the account, but that's good. And now what I can do is, all right, let's pick the org. So, well, Dan Wahlin. Now I need to go find that repository, which was SWA demo, I think it was. Yep, there it is. And then what branch? Well, I only have a main branch right now, so we're good to go. Now, this is where it gets really cool. So remember I said you could do Angular, you could do React, you could do Svelte. Well, these are the supported options, and there's even a custom because you can always do your own build process. But notice Angular, Blazor, Next.js, Nuxt, React, Svelte, Vue, just HTML. That I don't think you can beat the performance on that one. But I'm obviously going to go with React because that's what this was. And then it's going to say, all right, what is your app location? Like, where is your package JSON? Well, if we go back and I do ls, that's obviously at the root of this repo. Okay, so we're going to leave / there. Now, do you have any APIs? Now, normally what I'll do is either make a folder called API or functions like it says here, and that's where I put my Azure Functions code. In this case, I don't have it, but in the real app, which is actually right here, which I'll get to that in a moment, I do have that. So we're just going to leave it. And then the final is, what is your build location, your output location? Now, this depends. For React, it defaults to build if you use create React app. But if you use other options, there might be a different folder as the output. So you can kind of control what's the output location, because ultimately, this is where it's going to deploy the code up to static web apps and get that across the world for you. So I'm going to leave the defaults here. Now, as I mentioned, this is going to generate a workflow file for the build. This is an a GitHub action. And if you don't know about this, don't worry about it, because if you're doing the normal stuff, you just take what it gives you and it works. Now, for the custom app, which is the Azure communication ones I'm going to show you here, I did have to tweak it a bit because I had some environment variables I needed to pass in to the build process, things like that. And so, I don't live in this world either. Some of you, maybe this is your world. You do DevOps all day long. That's not me. So I did the normal. I, go check out the help docs. I go to ChatGPT. I do what I have to. So I don't have all that memorized is my point. That's not my specialty, actually. So what I'm going to do is hit review and create. We're going to leave the defaults as React. And the deployment of this is actually normally really, really fast. So we'll go ahead and hit create here, and assuming I don't have any validation errors. This part should kick off really, really quickly. We'll hope it doesn't make me a liar here, but let's see. All right, there we go. Notice, done. Yeah, but there's a little more to the story, because now if I go to the resource, notice that first off, it gave me a URL. Let me zoom that just a little bit more for everybody. That's going to be my website once it's ready. If I click it now, it's going to say, hey, I'm still waiting on your content, and I'll show you why. Because notice the source here, GitHub. Well, let's go to GitHub, and let's go to Actions. And look what's going on right now. It's actually building my project as we speak. And React, I don't know, it usually takes 2-ish minutes, something like that. But I can actually drill into this. And once this gets just a little bit further, there we go. Now it's still starting to pull an image that it uses for the build. You'll see an npm install run and all the normal stuff you would do locally. It's going to do here. And again, you can control all this because this is actually in the repo. If we go back, let's go back to code. Let's go to GitHub workflows. And this file right here, which you can totally change, this is the default it generated. And again, if you don't know this stuff, don't let it scare you because it's actually not that bad once you get the hang of it. But I'll say, I don't want to say 99% of the time, but maybe 90% of the time, it's going to give you exactly what you want. You don't even have to change anything. Now, I mentioned for me, I did have some environment variables. I had some API URLs I needed React to know about. I decided to do that through environment variables that are passed into the build process. You might use a different technique, though. You might, when the React app loads, it might call a metadata service and get those URLs. It's just what I chose to do. So the bottom line is you could totally customize not only the build of the front end app, the static app, but also what happens with your APIs. And I'll show you in a moment, kind of, you can even control what gets passed into those APIs, like environment variables. Pretty cool stuff. So let's go back and let's see where we're at here. It should be getting close to done. And I'll drill in. Yeah, so we're at like 2 minutes, 11 seconds. I told you it's 2-ish, maybe 3 minutes or so. Okay, it's done. So I was close. All right, so we're all good. In fact, if we go into here, it might be one up. You can actually get to the URL and click it. I'd have to go. Oh, there it is, right there, right there. Or I could just go back to here and click it. And prepare to be amazed, folks. The Hello World React app. That is what we've accomplished. Okay, that part's not that impressive. But what is impressive is I just literally did the whole build process, the whole deployment process across the whole world, by the way, in whatever time I just took. Pretty cool. And obviously, I didn't even have to do that much. Most of it was generated by the service. So that's the first part of this, is just what can you do with it? Well, let's move on to wrap up here with, all right, that's great, Dan, but we, over the last few weeks, have been talking about a Azure Communication Services app, and like, does that work? Because it has APIs and all this fun stuff. And the answer is yes. So I mentioned I've already deployed this one. And if I go to Overview, there's my URL for it. Okay, and this is the full app, which I'll run in just a moment. There is my GitHub repo, just like you saw. Now, yes, I have changed the YAML a bit there and tweaked that. I can get to my GitHub action runs. So I can do all kinds of fun stuff. But notice on the left here, if I go to configuration, notice I'm passing in the Azure Communication Services connection string. All right, because that is needed in this app. So that's one thing that's being passed in as an environment variable, if you will. Client ID, client secret, tenant ID, those are from my AAD app registration that I did. Because remember I said we have to set up an event so we can call into Teams. Well, there you go. That's the data there. And then user is the actual user ID of who sets up the event. So that might actually be just a system account that sets it up, and then customer service agents can join the calls. So you can customize all of that. You can set up custom domains. You certainly don't have to go with this lovely domain it gives you. In fact, I could just say add a custom domain on Azure DNS or another one. That's all built in. Here's my APIs. Now, these APIs, because remember earlier when I built this one, I didn't give it an API folder or a functions folder or something like that, right? Well, that's because I didn't have one. But this one does have that. Notice it says production function app managed. And that's because I told it, go to this folder, and that's where my functions are. Please deploy those to Azure Functions. And that includes my Microsoft Graph function that sets up the event. Now, here they are. These are the ones Aisha talked about last 2 weeks. So again, check out those recordings if you're interested. Last week, she talked about generating the ACS, the Azure Communication Services user identity and token. And then the week before that, we talked about how you use Microsoft Graph to set up the event dynamically so we can call into the meeting. So that's all being managed for me. And as I check in a new piece of code, for example, or even change a README per se, depends on how granular you want it to be, it can automatically kick off that build process and redeploy as the main branch gets changes. Pretty neat. You also have environments. So if you're used to slots, we call them in Azure App Services, you can do similar types of things to preview environments. So if a PR comes in, it will actually generate a preview environment to try out that PR live. Super cool. You don't have to set it up. It'll do that for you just based on the PR, the pull request coming in. All right, and then I'm not going to, again, have time to go into all this, but we'd have to upgrade the plan. Right now, I am on the free hobby plan, which, again, gives you a lot of stuff. But if you want things like free, custom authentication, I should say, not free, but custom authentication, private endpoints, things like that, then you can go to the standard and you'll see the cost there. It's like $642 a month, and there could be some storage as well. Pretty cool. So does it actually work? Well, here is this version of the app. So if I go to this, it's going to say getting Teams meeting link, initializing, and this is the app you've seen for those that have joined us over the last few weeks. For the last 6 weeks. So let me pick a different camera here. I'll just go to, let me see, where is my, that's interesting. It's not showing up. Okay, we'll go to that one. That's fine. Turn that on, and this is the Azure Communication Services component. There we are. Hello. Now, from here, I could log into Teams, and I would have a Teams meeting set up. Because I've demoed that at least 6 times now, we're not going to do that again here. I'm going to leave some time for questions at the end because Vesa mentioned that. But I hope that gets everybody started with how do you get started with this Azure Static Web Apps? And, is it something that would work for some of your apps? That's up to you. It's going to work for some, and there's probably others where you're like, no, we have a deployment process we already do. We do our own thing. Great. I'd say stick with that. But this is definitely a pretty cool option. So to wrap up, and I'll put these in the chat, you can get through this tutorial, including setting up the Azure Static Web App and all the ACS stuff we've covered over the last 6 weeks. Okay, that includes the Azure functions, the Microsoft Graph, the Teams meeting calls, all that fun stuff. You can also get to additional Microsoft Cloud samples. And when I say Microsoft Cloud here, generally what I mean is we're using 2+ Microsoft clouds. In other words, Azure plus Microsoft 365 or Power Platform plus Azure, as an example. The Azure Static Web Apps training they have is excellent. In fact, I should have that up right here. There is an entire learning path you can go through. It covers everything you need to know. If you're doing Blazor, they even have one with WebAssembly if you're interested, which is super cool. So check that out as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and copy these in the chat. That wraps up our kind of 6-part series. So I appreciate everybody listening to us. Hope you get a chance to check it out. Vesa, I'll turn it back over to you.
Excellent, Dan. Really, really cool and great demo. I think, as I said, quite often we forget about, we show cool stuff in the tooling and VS Code and all of that stuff. Okay, how do I get this then deployed? And it's like, good point. We forgot about showing that. So thank you, Dan. Really, really cool stuff.
Thank you.
And it wasn't too difficult. It was actually quite easy to get it deployed in production. So really, really cool stuff. Now, we do have a few minutes time. So I'm going to go a few slides just to recap on what's going to happen within the recording and what's going to be the agenda for next week. And then if there is any questions which we haven't answered, we can spend a few times on those. Dewain has been answering a lot of questions related on his demo already in the chat as well. Now, Next week on 21st of March, we'll have 3 demos. We'll have Thomas. Thomas is going to still talk about a bit about the Azure Communication Services on the features for your solution. It's not continuing exactly that application story, but there's additional things which we're going to cover there. Carrie Preety is most likely going to talk about Power Virtual Agents. To be honest, the agenda title is a bit to be defined yet for next week. And then Carrie is coming back from his vacation and closing off with the Teams Toolkit Learning Path. He's been walking us through around how do we create those Teams apps in Azure using the Teams Toolkit in Visual Studio Code. So that's part of next week's agenda. And then, of course, we have a lot of cool topics across the Microsoft 365 Power Platform scheduled for upcoming weeks as well. Now, this recording and this the recording of this community call will be available in 24 hours at the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community YouTube channel at akms/community/videos. That's an easy URL to remember. Please follow, subscribe us on Twitter. That's one way of understanding or following up on when there's new stuff available, or see the updates in LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to do that as well. We already talked about that the next call is in this series. It's happening 21st of March. Now, we do have the Power Platform monthly call happening tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time. We also have the Microsoft 365 Power Platform bi-weekly call happening on Thursday, and then identity call happening on Thursday as well. So a lot of stuff happening this week across the different calls. Now, we do have a few minutes, so we can actually see if there's any questions on the chat, or if we didn't, if we missed something, and we can watch nice animation going through the slides. That's cool as well. Any ad hoc questions? I can see one hand up on David. David, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that you all might notice that the call times this week might be a little off for you, whether it be depending on where you are in the world, because the U.S. sprung ahead, and we're still waiting for everyone else to do it as well over the next couple of weeks. So just be on the lookout, pay attention to your calendar, double check that, make sure that you have the right times and all that. Or just stay on the calls 24/7, and we'll be. Thank you.
Wow. Of course, wild. Thank you, David.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, I tried hard. Thank you.
But yeah, that's a really good reminder for sure. So that the US moved to the summertime or daylight saving time already, and Europe hasn't. India doesn't do that anymore. I don't know if they did that in historical things. That's why the calls are a bit moving. If you download the recurrent invites from the calls URL, those are adjusted automatically. So that's the cool thing about those invites. Let me go in here. AKMS community/calls. Those are adjusted automatically as needed. Any? Let's see if there's any questions. Nothing too dramatical, at least. A lot of thanks. Super impressive things. Super cool stuff. If there isn't any super ad hoc questions, we can close up a bit early. We can celebrate this with a few background noises. And I think we're good to go. Thanks everybody for joining. Let's spend say 5 minutes everybody's time for a quick if you have meetings starting on the hour. Thanks everybody for joining. Community call will be live within 24 hours at the YouTube. You cannot access the community call recording directly from chat. That is unfortunately not working, even though it's kind of a teasing that in the chat pretty soon. So wait for it to be in the YouTube. But thanks everybody. Have a great rest of the week. Stay safe, and we'll be seeing hopefully you on the other calls this week. Cheers. Bye-bye.